The Royal Tank Regiment is the oldest tank unit in the world, being formed by the British Army in 1916 during the Great War. Today it is an armoured regiment of the British Army. Formerly known as the Tank Corps and the Royal Tank Corps, it is part of the Royal Armoured Corps. First World War. The formation of the Royal Tank Regiment followed the invention of the tank. Tanks were first used at the Battle of Floers-Courcelette in September 1916 during the Battle of the Somme in the First World War. At that time the 6 tank companies were grouped as the heavy section of the Machine Gun Corps. In November 1916 the 8 companies then in existence were each expanded to form battalions and designated the Heavy Branch MGC. Another 7 battalions, I-O, were formed by January 1918, when all the battalion were changed to numbered units. On 28 July 1917 the Heavy Branch was separated from the rest of the Corps by royal warrant and given official status as the Tank Corps. The formation of new battalions continued, and by December 1918, 26 had been created, though there were only 25 battalions equipped with tanks, as the 17th had converted to armoured cars in April 1918. The first commander of the Tank Corps was Hugh Ells. The Corps saw much action at the Battle of Cambrai in November 1917. Interwar period. After the war, the Tank Corps was trimmed down to a central depot and 4 battalions. The 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th battalions. On 18 October 1923, it was officially given the title Royal, making it the Royal Tank Corps by Colonel-in-Chief King George V. It was at this time that the motto, "Fear Naught," the black beret, and the unit badge were adopted. In 1933, the 6th Battalion, RTC, was formed in Egypt by combining the personnel of the 3rd and 5th Regular Army Armoured Car Companies. In 1934, the 1st Battalion, RTC, was formed in England with personnel drawn from the 2nd, 3rd and 5th Battalions. With the preparations for war in the late 1930s, 2 more regular army battalions were formed, the 7th in 1937 and the 8th in 1938. In the latter half of 1938, 6 TAR infantry battalions were converted to tank battalions, with a further 6 created in 1939 following the duplication of the TAR. During the early 1920s, the Tank Corps was augmented by 20 armoured car companies, 12 regular army, created using MGC elements, and 8 territorial army, created by the reduction and conversion of yeomanry regiments. 8 of the regular army companies were later converted into independent light tank companies. All 12 companies had been disbanded by the outbreak of the Second World War. On 4 April 1939, the Royal Tank Corps was renamed the Royal Tank Regiment and became a wing of the newly created Royal Armoured Corps. The 8 yeomanry armoured car companies of the RTR were activated and transferred to the Royal Armoured Corps. Before the Second World War, Royal Tank Corps recruits were required to be at least 5 feet 4 inches tall. They initially enlisted for 6 years with the colours and a further 6 years with the reserve. They trained at the Royal Tank Corps depot at Bovington Camp, Dorset for about 8 months. Second World War. At the outbreak of war, the regiment consisted of 20 battalions, 8 regular and 12 territorial. Regular Army Heavy Armoured Brigade, 1st RTR and 6th RTR, 1st Heavy Armoured Brigade, 2nd RTR, 3rd RTR and 5th RTR, 1st Army Tank Brigade, 4th RTR, 7th RTR and 8th RTR. Territorial Army 21st Army Tank Brigade, 42nd RTR, 44th RTR and 48th RTR, 23rd Army Tank Brigade, 40th RTR, 46th RTR and 50th RTR, 24th Army Tank Brigade, 41st RTR, 45th RTR and 47th RTR, 25th Army Tank Brigade, 43rd RTR, 49th RTR and 51st RTR. During the course of the war, 4 hostilities-only battalions were formed. The 9th, 10th, 11th and 12th, 11 RTR formed part of 79th Armored Divisions, initially equipped with Canal Defense light tanks. It converted to Buffalo not long after D-Day and participated in the assault crossing of the Rhine. Prime Minister Winston Churchill was ferried across the Rhine in a Buffalo from C Squadron 11 RTR. The regiment's numerous units took part in countless battles in the Second World War, including the Battle of Dunkirk, El Alamein, Italian Campaign, Burma Campaign and D-Day landings of 6 June 1944. Field Marshal Bernard Law Montgomery would frequently wear the regiment's beret, with his Field Marshal's badge sewn on next to the regimental cap badge, as it was more practical whilst travelling on a tank than either a formal peaked hat or the Australian slouch hat he previously wore. Post-war period. After service in the Korean War, the RTR was reduced through various amalgamations, firstly, in 1959-60. 3 RTR and 6 RTR amalgamated as 3 RTR, 4 RTR and 7 RTR amalgamated as 4 RTR, 5 RTR and 8 RTR amalgamated as 5 RTR. In 1969, 5 RTR was disbanded, while, in 1992 under options for change, 4 RTR amalgamated with 1 RTR, and 3 RTR amalgamated with 2 RTR. On the 2nd of August 2014, 1 RTR and 2 RTR amalgamated at Carter Barracks, Bulford, and for the first time in its history the Royal Tank Regiment is a single battalion regiment. The new regiment is titled the Royal Tank Regiment. The Royal Tank Regiment has continued to see action, including missions in Bosnia and Herzegovina and Kosovo. Elements of 1 RTR were deployed to Afghanistan in 2002, and both regiments were involved in the invasion of Iraq, with the 2 RTR battle group involved in taking Basra. Both regiments have continued deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan. Current status. The regiment is equipped with Challenger 2 tanks and based at Tidworth and slated to be part of the reaction force, coming under 1st Armoured Infantry Brigade. Unlike the other Type 56 Challenger 2 regiments, the RTR has an integrated CBRN reconnaissance squadron operating the Fuchs reconnaissance vehicle. Following amalgamation, the regiment comprises 6 squadrons: Ajax, Challenger 2 Armoured Squadron; Badger, Challenger 2 Armoured Squadron; Cyclops, Challenger 2 Armoured Squadron; Dreadnought, Command and Reconnaissance Squadron; Egypt, Headquarters Squadron; Falcon, CBRN Reconnaissance Squadron; Challenger 2, Scimitar, Fuchs. Battle Honours. The battle honours are: the Great War Somme 1916-18, Arras 1917-18, Messines 1917, Ypres 1917, Cambrai 1917, Saint Quentin 1918, Villers-Bretonneux, Amiens, Bapaume 1918, Hindenburg Line, EPE Acute HY, Celle, France and Flanders 1916-18, Gaza, the Second World War, Northwest Europe 1940, Arras counter-attack, Calais 1940, Saint Omalabase, Somme, North Africa 1940-43. Sidi Barani, Badr FOMM, Sidi Suleiman, Tobruk 1941, Sidi Rajek 1941, Belhamid, Gazala, Cauldron, Knightsbridge, Defense of Alamein Line, Alam El Hafa, El Alamein, Muret, Akarat, Fondouk, El Corsia, Medjez Plain, Tunis, Sicily 1943. Primasol Bridge, Germany, Adrano, Italy 1943-45. Sangro, Salerno, Volturno Crossing, Garigliano Crossing, Anzio, advanced to Florence, Gothic Line, Coriano, Lamona Crossing, Rimini Line, Argenta Gap, Northwest Europe 1944-45, Odin, Con, Bergebus Ridge, Montpincon, Falaise, Nadrain, Scheldt, Venlo Pocket, Rhineland, Rhine, Bremen, Abyssinia 1940, Greece 1940. 1941. Burma 1942. Post-war years. Career 1951–53. Al-Basra, Iraq 2003. Colonel's Commandant. Colonel's Commandant have been. Traditions. The official regimental motto is "Fear Naught." The regimental colors are brown, red and green. When it was first formed, the Tank Corps had no distinctive colors. Nothing was done about it until just before the Battle of Cambrai in 1917, when General Els, wanting some distinguishing mark for his tank, went into a shop to buy material for a flag. Although stocks were small, the general bought some lengths of silk, brown, red and green. The silk was sewn together and was flown from his tank, Hilda, in which he led the Tank Corps into battle. The colors typified the struggle of the Corps, from mud, through blood to the green fields beyond. This most apt interpretation of the colors was suggested by Colonel Fuller. The flag is flown with the green uppermost. Uniform. The uniform of the Royal Tank Regiment is unique in many ways to the rest of the Royal Armoured Corps and British Army. The black beret. Much of the uniform and equipment of soldiers during the First World War was quite impractical for use inside a tank. In particular, the vision apertures in a tank were so small that it was necessary to keep the eyes very close to them in order to get even a limited vision. Thus, any headdress with a peak was entirely unsuitable. In May 1918, General Els and Colonel Fuller were discussing the future of the Tank Corps and its uniform, and General Els tried on a beret of the 70th Chasseurs Alpins who were billeted nearby. A black beret was selected as it would not show oil stains. No change in uniform was possible during the war, but after a prolonged argument with the War Office, the black beret was approved by King George V on 5 March 1924. The black beret remained the exclusive headdress of the Royal Tank Corps until its practical value was recognized by others and its use extended to the majority of the Royal Armoured Corps in 1940. On the introduction of the blue beret in 1949, the Royal Tank Regiment reclaimed its right to the exclusive use of the black beret, which may not be worn by any other regiment or corps with the exception of the Berkshire and Westminster Dragoons squadrons of the Royal Yeomanry. Sleeve badge. The sleeve badge of the First World War Mk1 tank preceded the formation of the Royal Tank Corps when it was worn by the heavy branch of the Machine Gun Corps. Authorized on 7 May 1917, it is still worn today. The ash plant. During the First World War, walking sticks were often carried by officers. Such sticks came to have a new and more important use with the introduction of tanks, which often became bog on battlefields, particularly in Flanders. Officers of the Tank Corps used these sticks to probe the ground in front of their tanks, testing for firmness as they went forward. Often the commanders led their tanks into action on foot. To commemorate this, officers of the regiment carry ash plant sticks instead of the short cane customary to other arms. Black coveralls. The wearing of black overalls is a custom reserved to the regiment by Material Regulations for the Army, Volume 3, Pamphlet No. 4. It stems from the Royal Review held at Aldershot in the presence of King George V on 13 July 1935, on which occasion black overalls were worn on parade by all ranks of the Royal Tanks Corps. The practice lapsed during the Second World War, but was reintroduced in the 1950s. Order of precedence. Alliances. Canada. 12th Regiment Blindé du Canada. Australia. 1st Armoured Regiment. New Zealand. Royal New Zealand Armoured Corps. New Zealand. Queen Alexandra's Mounted Rifles. India. 2nd Lancers. Pakistan. 13th Lancers. Royal Navy. HMS Kent. France. 501 Regiment des Chars de Combat. Affiliated Yeomanry. Dorset Yeomanry. Westminster Dragoons. Royal Devon Yeomanry. Bibliography. 40. George Livesey, Jack. The Complete Guide to Tanks and Armoured Fighting Vehicles. Southwater. ISBN 9781780191645. Jocelyn, L. T. Col. H.F. 1st. Cub. HMSO, 1960. Orders of Battle, Second World War, 1939–1945. London. London Stamp Exchange. ISBN 0-948130-03-2.